All right, yo guys, what's going on? It's your boy Transcendent Gaming back here, except this isn't a gaming video. What we're actually going to be doing here today is a new series to the channel. It's going to be like a basketball recap, and I wanted to start it for the playoffs because, as you guys know, I'm a huge basketball fan, and I've been watching pretty much every game every night. Now, I do want to say, excuse my hair, please. It isn't quite right now, but that's okay. Uh, but basically, this is going to be a little recap series for each day of games. As you guys watched King of the Fourth Quarter or Kenny, he does this on one of his second channels. I definitely recommend you guys go check him out. He has a lot of great insight into every game, and that's kind of where this is inspired from. So I want to show some love to him. Shout out Kenny. Anyways, first game of the day, Heat versus Hawks. Now this was a good game for me specifically. I really liked it, and for I think any fan of basketball. Maybe not for Heat fans, but I don't think they're really tripping too much. This game was delayed 55 minutes because they found a suspicious package outside of the Hawks arena. Uh, Ultimately, it was nothing, but the game did get not suspended, sorry, delayed, and it kind of threw the whole schedule off. So it kind of put us behind on watching the Suns and Pelicans play as well. One other thing, key note, real quick, before we get into the actual game. I loved JJ Redick as a commentator. Me, personally, I'm a huge JJ Redick fan. That's just me. Somebody else might not have liked him, but I personally loved him as a commentator, but I also love his podcast, so I really like the insight he brings to the game. Now, here we're going to go into the first quarter. Some of my key notes was that Bam Adebayo looked great on both ends of the court, and this was for the whole game. I think a lot of people realize how good of a defender he is, but switching defensively for a guy that size, he is the best in the league at that. I mean, he is a fantastic help defender. He just has a great defensive IQ. And he played good offensively too, even though his stat sheet might not jump out at you. He was great. Another key note I have for the first quarter was that it really seemed like Trae Young was missing Clint Capella, and to me, it almost looked like a James Harden Rocket situation where whenever Harden first kind of lost Capella, whenever they traded him, I was a little worried because they used so much pick and roll action. Those two did, and it's the same way with Trae Young. I really felt like he was missing Capella. I'm just gonna say that, but that was for the first three quarters because he turned it up in the fourth. But we'll get there. The Heat were really targeting Trae throughout the whole game. They were really going at him, and Bogdanovich looked great in this game. Now, Jimmy Butler, if you were to tell me after the first quarter that Jimmy Butler was going to score less points than Trae Young, I would have told you were crazy. Jimmy had 11 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists in the first quarter. Trae Young had 2 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and both teams shot like 2 for 17 or something from 3 in the first quarter, like combined. It was ugly. It was a really ugly first quarter. Miami ended up winning that quarter, but ultimately in the second they kind of fell down a little bit. The second, one of my keynotes was that they looked really sloppy, especially the beginning of the second quarter. They just looked very sloppy, and a few players kind of got in a little foul trouble, got pulled from the game. Ultimately, it didn't end up amounting to anything, but uh, Tyler Hero, man, he's something serious. He was the guy all night, and I had this for the second quarter in my notes, but it was the whole night. Tyler Hero was the guy that stopped the bleeding for the Miami Heat. If the Hawks went on a run, Tyler Hero was right there trying to stop it, and that is the if you guys know basketball, you know that is a super important thing to have on your team, and a lot of the times it's your superstar. For the Heat, a lot of the times it's Tyler Hero. He's just their offensive. He's their offensive weapon, and it's kind of funny because he comes off the bench, but he's great. I mean, nobody can take anything away from him. Trae Young, really, that's one note I had was how good he is at the rip through. You know, he's really got that move from Chris Paul. But another thing was through the first three quarters, Miami's trap and help defense on Trae Young was tremendous. Really had him struggling. He had no space. PJ Tucker did a great job as the primary defender on him. And it was another thing for quarter three as well. One of my keynotes was that they were playing suffocating defense on Trae Young. and it was just great to see for Miami defensively wise. They looked a lot better in quarter three for defense and offense. Kind of made a little comeback because they got down in the first half. They made a comeback, and like I said, it really showed their veteran poise that they were able to do that. Uh, Lowry was kind of not great offensively, but I thought he played okay defensively. I would have liked to seen him in the fourth quarter instead of Strus. It's just my personal opinion. Uh, I didn't really like having Strus in the game in the fourth quarter instead of Lowry, but that's just me. And another keynote I had was that Bam's passing is great. He almost, man, some of the plays he made in this game, I kind of looked at him like, man, he looks a lot like Draymond Green. Obviously, I think Bam is a more, I don't want to say talented, but I think he's better offensively than Draymond. Draymond, and he's a better all-around player than Draymond Green is now. But he kind of reminds me of Draymond in his prime. The Heat went on a huge 21-0 run in this quarter three, and their defense was great. They were switching everything. It just looked great. And it took Nate McMillan way too long to call a timeout on this, in my opinion. He let them get a 21-0 run before he called a timeout. And to me, that's just too long. You need to cut off that run at like 10 to 15, kind of stop the bleeding, help your team get something going. But ultimately, it didn't end up mattering, as this team right here, man, they came back in the fourth, and the Heat just, at the beginning of the fourth, they seemed like they wanted it more than the Hawks, but they called a timeout, and it was just, they came out and they showed a lot of fight. DeLon Wright was great. I think he was like 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 or something. He was great. Bogdanovich was great. And then Tyler Hero again was stopping the bleeding in the fourth. And then Jimmy Butler got going, but then Trae Young showed up in the fourth quarter. He hits that floater with 4.4 seconds left to put them up one, and then Jimmy gets one more shot. One thing I will say is I do not like the fact that I like the play they drew up for Jimmy, and I know what they were going for. That's a shot he's hit multiple times. He hit it last game. He hit it this game. That little, drive to the right, step back three kind of thing, fade away. I didn't like it in that situation. In my mind, you need a 2, not a 3. You're only down 1. One thing I will say is Trae Young's team kept him in this game. If it wasn't for how good their role players played, they would have been blown out. But guys like Bogdanovich and DeLon Wright really kept them in this game. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody as well. That's pretty much all I've got for this game. Huge win for the Hawks. Really kind of kept them in the series. If they went down 3-0, it's pretty much a wrap. If you go down 3-0, you guys know that. But that's pretty much all I have for this game. Now let's jump right into the Suns versus Pelicans. All right, so now we get into the Suns versus the Pelicans game. This was a very good game as well. It was also delayed on TV. It had already started, and at one point we had 3 different playoff basketball games going on at once. Not a big fan of that personally, but that's okay. I mean, I understand. Probably wouldn't have happened if the game wouldn't have got delayed, but that's okay. The biggest storyline behind this game was, can the Suns prove that they can do it without Booker? And they did. DeAndre Ayton had a fantastic first half. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had 21 in the first half. It was a great game for Ayton. Paul started out the first quarter with 5 points, 5 assists. I think by the half he had like 10 assists. And then the Suns' interior presence, man, their scoring inside was phenomenal today. It was what got them through this game. Their 3-point, at one point, I think they missed 14 threes in a row, and then Cameron Johnson broke the streak. That was either in the second or third quarter. I can't really remember here. But, man, CP3 is so smart. His IQ is way off the charts. I mean, he showed today that he's still the best pure point guard in the league. Ayton came out in quarter 3 and just continued to dominate. And McCollum missed some free throws in that game for sure, but ultimately he had a pretty decent game as well. I had in my notes that unless the team made a huge run in the fourth quarter, this game was going to come down to the wire, and it basically did, but the Suns did kind of make a little bit of a run. And then we just kind of had the little fouling game going on for a while. I'm not a big fan of that, but I mean, I understand why teams do it. Uh, Jose Alvarado, he is a serious, serious player. He is somebody who has a long career in this league. Uh, kind of like they talk about Patrick Beverly, he is a professional pest. That's just what he does. At one point in the game, he was going back and forth with CP3. Just they were trading buckets in the fourth quarter, and Alvarado hadn't scored until the fourth quarter. He scored like 9 straight, uh, and then he stopped scoring, and they took him out of the game. But really want to show some love to him because he had a phenomenal game. Chris Paul, an absolute masterclass on how to close out a game there. He took over. In my notes here, CP3 is looking unstoppable. He scored 8 in a row at one point, and the Suns were really after it in the fourth quarter on the offensive glass, despite kind of losing the rebounding battle throughout most of the game. Brandon Ingram had 34 points this game. He was terrific, and I just want to give a major shout out to Brandon Ingram, and I've been saying this for a while. You can ask any of my friends who are around me. I think Brandon Ingram is the closest thing to Kevin Durant we have in the league, and he looked unguardable tonight. Mikal Bridges is one of the best defenders in the league. He's a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, and he's got a 7'1" wingspan. He couldn't stop Ingram tonight. Ingram was hitting shots over him. But ultimately, they ended up losing. The Suns had 64 points in the paint. That's an insanely high number. I think that was more than they had combined in the first 2 games. Chris Paul ended with 28 points and 14 assists. DeAndre Ayton ended with 28 points and 17 rebounds. Mikal Bridges ended with 17, which he probably got a good 5 or 6 of those at the end of the game off of free throw shooting. And then JaVale McGee was huge coming off the bench, just continuing to dominate in the paint, which is something that the Phoenix Suns really focused on in this game. CJ had 30. 3 of those 30 were a walk-off buzzer beater 3. It really just made it 114 to 111 instead of 114 to 107 or 108. And it really wasn't much. And then Ingram had 34 and 7 rebounds. Really just a great game. All the way down to the wire pretty much, and despite the slow ending, it was a great game. Huge win for the Suns. They proved that they can do it without Devin Booker, and I think as long as they get out of this round, they'll be fine. Now, the last game, kind of the second game of the day, but I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I did not watch a lot of this game. I tuned in late. Here's my notes on the Bucks versus the Bulls game. And I told myself the only way I'm going to put this game priority over either of these other games is if it's close. And at no point after about the first quarter was it close. Grayson Allen came in first quarter, made 3 threes in a row, shot 3 for 3. He was shooting great. And one note I had was that DeMar DeRozan and LaVine's mid-range game is phenomenal. Now, of course, we knew that about DeRozan, but I think LaVine is very great at the mid-range too. And in quarter one, the Bucks were not letting off the gas. It was pretty apparent to me that this was going to be a game they dominated in. And they most certainly dominated in it. My next note is that I looked back up, and the Bucks were up 73 to 47. That's almost a 30-point lead. At that point, the game was basically over. That was like 5 minutes left in the third quarter or something. And then I looked back again with 10 minutes left in the game. They were up 93 to 63, and the deep bench was coming in. So, for the Bucks here, to me, what this game proved was that they're going to be okay without Chris Middleton. And hopefully he can come back soon. You know, they're saying 2 to 3 weeks, but we're just going to have to see on that. I think it's going to be huge maybe in the next series. But for this series, they're going to beat the Bulls. I think my bracket, I had them beating the Bulls in 5, so I was kind of happy the Bulls won that one game. It made my bracket look better. But overall, this game was kind of not really that interesting. I didn't even look at box scores for it yet. Of course, I will. But I'm just kind of trying to get this video out. Now, one thing. I'm going to leave the link to my Twitter down in the description. If you guys enjoy these type of videos, let me know down in the comments if there's anything I can do to improve these videos. let me know down in the comments as well. Uh, but this is a series that I kind of plan on doing for the rest of the playoffs. Now, I might miss a day or two. I'm not going to sit here and promise that I'm going to have you guys a recap every day. Probably not going to happen. I do have a full-time job, but my goal is to have a recap out every day. That's my goal. If I can do it every day, then awesome. But I'm going to leave the link to my Twitter down below. I live tweet a lot of these games. Not a ton, but, I do kind of make some tweets throughout the games. And I would like for you guys to, kind of keep up with me that way as well. It would be awesome. And it would also kind of give me another platform to connect with you guys on. Also, I'm going to link my TikTok down below as well. I'm thinking about starting to post some on there, some NBA content, because I just really think that this is the type of stuff that I would like to make content on. Also, another idea that I'm having right now is that as teams get eliminated, I'm going to make 2K rebuilds on them, kind of realistic rebuilds on what I would do if I was them in the future. So if you guys are interested in any of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you click any of the links down below. Make sure you leave a like, and I'll see you guys all next time. Peace.